My name is Willie Parker, 35, and I never thought I'd be the villain in my sister's Christmas story. As a single dad, every dollar I earn goes toward giving my 8-year-old son Tyler the life he deserves. When my wealthy sister Amanda mocked our modest lifestyle at Thanksgiving, something in me snapped. I spent $1,900 money I didn't have on lavish gifts for her 3 kids. But when Tyler unwrapped just a pen on Christmas morning, his quiet, "Was I bad this year?" Dad shattered my heart and changed everything. Before I share what happened next, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, and hit that subscribe button if you've ever had to stand up to family who just didn't get it. Growing up in suburban Chicago, our family was solidly middle class. Mom worked as a nurse at the local hospital while Dad managed a hardware store downtown. We never had the newest toys or fanciest clothes, but we had enough. Amanda, my sister, is 2 years older than me and was always the achiever, straight A's captain of the debate team homecoming queen. I was more of a tech geek who preferred building computers in the basement to socializing. Despite our differences, we were close as kids. That changed as we grew older. 5 years ago, our parents were driving home from their anniversary dinner when a drunk driver ran a red light. Neither survived the crash. The loss devastated us both, but we handled grief differently. I threw myself into being the best father possible for Tyler, while Amanda seemed to channel her pain into building the perfect life, at least on the outside. My own story took a different turn when my wife Melissa decided 3 years ago that family life wasn't what she wanted after all. The divorce was quick, but the emotional fallout lingered. Melissa moved to California to pursue her career in marketing, making appearances in Tyler's life through occasional video calls and even less frequent visits. I became a full-time single dad overnight, juggling my job as an IT specialist with raising a young boy. Our modest 2-bedroom apartment in a working-class neighborhood is nothing special, but I've tried to make it home. Tyler's room is decorated with solar system decals on the ceiling and bookshelves filled with science books and comic collections from yard sales. The living room furniture has seen better days with a couch that sags in the middle and a coffee table bearing rings from countless cups of hot chocolate during our movie nights. Money is always tight. Between rent, utilities, groceries, and the medical expenses for Tyler's asthma, I'm constantly robbing Peter to pay Paul. I've taken on freelance IT work on weekends when Tyler visits his friend Jason's house, but it's never quite enough. Still, I've always made sure Tyler never feels the strain of our financial situation. At least I thought I had. Amanda's life couldn't be more different. She married Richard Hoffman, heir to a commercial real estate development company, 8 years ago. They live in a 6,000-square-foot mansion in North Shore with their 3 children, Zoe 12, Maxwell 10, and Emily 7. Their house has 6 bedrooms, a home theater, an indoor pool, and grounds maintained by a full-time landscaper. Richard drives a Mercedes, Amanda a Range Rover, and they vacation in places I can only see on travel websites. My sister has always been competitive, but her marriage to Richard amplified this trait tenfold. Every conversation somehow circles back to their latest purchase, vacation, or the children's achievements. At family gatherings, she'd show up with expensive bottles of wine or gourmet desserts that made my store-bought contributions look pathetic by comparison. Last Christmas was especially tough. Amanda hosted dinner at her house, where she'd hired a professional decorator to transform the place into something from a magazine spread. Each of her kids received at least 15 presents, including a new iPad for Maxwell, a designer purse for Zoe, and an elaborate dollhouse for Emily that cost more than my monthly rent. Tyler received video games that were incompatible with his outdated console and clothes a size too small. When I quietly mentioned this to Amanda, she waved it off with, "Oh, you can exchange them. I wasn't sure what he'd like since you guys don't update your social media much." Despite these dynamics, Tyler is a remarkable kid. He never complains about what he doesn't have, finding joy in small pleasures like our Saturday morning pancake tradition or the model rocket kits I occasionally splurge on. He excels in science and math, and spends hours creating detailed drawings of inventions he dreams up. His teachers call him thoughtful and kind, always the first to help a classmate struggling with assignments. Tyler's relationship with his cousins is complicated. Zoe largely ignores him, absorbed in her phone and social status. Maxwell occasionally includes Tyler in games, but makes sure to point out the differences in their possessions. Emily is sweet, but parrots her mother's condescending phrases. Despite this, Tyler looks forward to family gatherings, his natural optimism, always hoping for connection. Previous Christmases were lean but special. I'd save for months to afford one or two meaningful gifts, like the starter telescope last year that we used to stargaze from our apartment's roof. We'd make paper snowflakes to decorate our small artificial tree, and bake cookies using a recipe my mother passed down. These simple traditions meant everything to us, creating memories that had nothing to do with price tags. But this year, everything would change, because of what happened at Thanksgiving. Amanda insisted on hosting Thanksgiving this year, sending elaborately designed digital invitations 3 weeks in advance. "We've renovated the kitchen," her message read, "and Richard wants to show off the new imported marble countertops and professional-grade appliances." When Tyler and I arrived at their house that Thursday afternoon, the display of wealth was even more ostentatious than usual. A new fountain adorned the circular driveway, and the front door had been replaced with hand-carved mahogany. Inside their home smelled of cinnamon apple and pretension. Willie Tyler. "You made it!" Amanda greeted us, air-kissing my cheek, while keeping her body at a distance as if my Target sweater might contaminate her cashmere ensemble. "Let me show you the renovations before everyone sits down." The kitchen tour felt more like a museum exhibition, with Amanda pointing out the Italian marble, the French copper pots hanging above the island, and the German appliances that made cooking a joy. The refrigerator had a touchscreen that displayed the family's schedule and could order groceries automatically when supplies ran low. It's very impressive. I managed feeling the familiar inadequacy that always surfaced around my sister. Tyler stood quietly beside me, taking everything in with wide eyes. Richard appeared from the wine cellar carrying a bottle with a layer of dust on it. "Willie, good to see you, man." He clapped me on the shoulder with his free hand. "Just pulled this beauty out, a 2014 Bordeaux that's been aging nicely. Cost more than some people's monthly salary." He laughed as if he'd made a joke. "Sounds great," I replied, thinking of the $12 bottle of Pinot Noir sitting in my car that suddenly seemed inappropriate to bring inside. The dining room table was a showcase of Martha Stewart perfection. Crystal glasses caught the light from the chandelier, and an elaborate centerpiece of autumn flowers, artisanal pumpkins and gold-leafed branches stretched down the middle. Name cards written in calligraphy marked each person's place. Amanda's 3 children filtered in each, absorbed in their own activities. Zoe barely looked up from her phone to mumble hello. Maxwell showed off his new gaming handheld. It's not even available in stores yet. Dad's friend imported it from Japan. Emily twirled in her Thanksgiving dress, announcing it was designer, and probably cost more than Uncle Willie's car. Dinner itself was a parade of dishes that belonged in a food magazine heritage. Turkey with truffle butter. Under the skin, oyster stuffing, roasted Brussels sprouts, with pancetta sweet potato, soufflé, and 3 different kinds of homemade cranberry sauce. Everything was delicious. I had to admit, though, the constant commentary about ingredient sourcing and preparation techniques made it hard to simply enjoy the meal. "The turkey is from a special farm in Vermont," Amanda explained. "They play classical music for the birds and feed them organic grain. It's $80 a pound, but you can taste the difference." As we ate, Richard steered the conversation toward work. "How's the IT business, Willie, still fixing other people's computer problems?" There was a subtle dig in his tone. "It's steady," I replied. "I've been specializing more in cybersecurity lately." Interesting field." Richard nodded dismissively. "Of course, in commercial real estate, we're dealing with properties worth tens of millions. Just closed on a downtown development that's going to transform the skyline." He launched into a detailed account of his latest business triumph while I pushed food around my plate. Amanda turned the conversation to Tyler. "How's school going, buddy? Still getting those, what were they again, B+ in math?" She smiled sweetly. "Actually, he's getting straight A's now," I interjected. His science teacher suggested we look into the gifted program. "Oh, that's nice," Amanda replied. "Maxwell's been in the gifted program since 1st grade, of course. And Zoe's being recruited for the prestigious Young Leaders Summer program at Northwestern." The real tension began when dessert was served, and the topic shifted to Christmas plans. Amanda clinked her spoon against her crystal water glass to get everyone's attention. "So, Richard and I have been thinking," she announced. "We should do Christmas together this year. Here, of course. We're having the great room decorated professionally, and we've ordered a 12-foot Norwegian spruce. It'll be magical for all the kids." Before I could respond, she continued, "The children have already made their Christmas lists. Zoe wants the new MacBook Air and a set of professional drawing tablets for her digital art. Maxwell is hoping for the PlayStation 5 and the virtual reality headset to go with it. Emily wants the deluxe American Girl collection with all the historical outfits." Amanda pulled out her phone and began scrolling through a digital list. "We'll need to coordinate gifts so Tyler doesn't feel left out when my kids get what they deserve. What's on his list this year, Willie?" All eyes turned to me then to Tyler, who shrank in his seat. The truth was, Tyler had asked for a new set of colored pencils books about space exploration, and maybe if it wasn't too expensive, a beginner's microscope I'd found on sale for $60. Before I could answer, Richard chuckled and swirled the wine in his glass. "Maybe Santa visits nicer neighborhoods more often." He winked at Tyler, who looked down at his plate. The rage that flashed through me must have shown on my face because Amanda quickly jumped in. "Richard's just joking, of course. Santa loves all children equally." But her condescending tone made it clear that she believed her children deserved more than mine. The conversation moved on to other topics, but I couldn't focus. I kept glancing at Tyler, who had gone quiet, pushing his pumpkin pie around the plate without eating it. On the drive home, he stared out the window for several minutes before finally speaking. "Dad," he asked in a small voice, "does Santa think I'm not good enough?" That question broke something in me. I gripped the steering wheel tighter and assured him that he was more than good enough. He was the best kid I knew, but internally, I was seething. The casual cruelty of my sister and her husband, the way they'd made my son feel less than in his own family, it was unacceptable. That night, after tucking Tyler into bed, I sat at our kitchen table with a notepad and began to formulate a plan. Amanda and Richard had pushed me too far, and this Christmas they were going to learn a lesson about what really matters. I would give their children the Christmas gifts they wanted, every last expensive item, but at a price none of us could have anticipated. The morning after Thanksgiving, I sat down with my financial records spread across the kitchen table. The picture wasn't pretty. Rent for our apartment was due on the first $850. Tyler's asthma medication cost $200 per month, even with insurance. The car needed new brakes soon, at least $300 at the shop down the street. Electric and gas bills, groceries, phone bill, it all added up to barely making ends meet each month. My checking account held just over $1,000 with another $700 in a savings account I'd been building for emergencies. My credit card already carried a balance of $400 from when Tyler needed an emergency room visit last month when his asthma flared up during a school field trip. I pulled up the notepad where I jotted down the items on my nieces' and nephews' Christmas lists. Even with Black Friday deals I was looking at, MacBook Air for Zoe, $800 on sale. Professional drawing tablets, $300. PlayStation 5 for Maxwell, $500. VR headset, $400. American Girl collection for Emily, $300. That totaled $2,300 money I simply didn't have. But the memory of Tyler's downcast face, the quiet resignation in his voice when he asked if he wasn't good enough for Santa, hardened my resolve. I made my decision. I would use the emergency savings. I would pick up extra night shifts at work. My company needed on-call IT support, and they paid time and a half for overnight hours. I would sell my prized collection of vintage video games that I'd been gathering since college. I'd skip lunches, make coffee at home, instead of stopping at the corner shop, and cancel my streaming subscriptions temporarily. Every penny would go toward my plan. That Saturday, while Tyler was at a play date with his friend Jason, I drove to a collector's shop downtown. My collection of sealed original Nintendo games, some rare Sega titles, and limited edition releases from the 90s brought in $650 less than they were worth, but I needed quick cash. It hurt to watch the owner box up games I'd spent years hunting down, but I thought of Tyler's question again and hardened my resolve. I approached my supervisor on Monday morning. "Hey Mark, I heard the team needs overnight support this month. I'd like to volunteer for as many shifts as possible. Mark looked surprised. You sure, Willie? I know you've got Tyler to think about. My neighbor, Mrs. Davidson, can stay over on nights I work. Tyler will be asleep anyway. This wasn't entirely true. I'd have to ask Mrs. Davidson and pay her from my already stretched budget, but I'd make it work. Well, we could use you Tuesdays, Thursdays, and every other weekend through December, time and a half after midnight. I'll take all of them, I said immediately. Over the next week, I researched every deal, sale, and discount available for the items on my nieces' and nephews' lists. I created email alerts for price drops, downloaded store apps with special offers, and mapped out a Black Friday strategy that would maximize savings. Thanksgiving night, while Tyler slept, I joined the online queues for electronics. By morning, I'd secured the PlayStation 5 with a $100 discount and found a bundle deal on the VR headset that saved another $50. The MacBook would be available at a tech store downtown, but only for the first 100 customers. I arranged for Mrs. Davidson to come over at 4 in the morning so I could get in line by 5. Black Friday was brutal. I stood in the freezing November cold for 3 hours, stamping my feet to keep blood flowing, clutching a thermos of coffee like a lifeline. But I emerged victorious with the MacBook Air at $750, a savings of $50 that felt like a major triumph. The drawing tablets required visits to 3 different stores, each with their own doorbusters. By afternoon, my feet were blistered and I was running on fumes, but I had crossed every major item off the list. The American Girl collection was the last challenge. The store at the upscale mall across town had a special Saturday morning event with 20% off collections. I arrived an hour before opening and joined a line of determined parents, mostly mothers, in expensive athleisure wear, clutching seasonal Starbucks cups. I felt out of place in my worn jeans and work boots, but I was beyond caring about appearances. By the end of the weekend, I had spent $1,900, maxed out my credit card, emptied my savings, and committed to a month of overnight shifts and skipped lunches. The gifts filled the trunk of my car and had to be carefully smuggled into my apartment while Tyler was at school. I hid them in my closet behind winter coats and storage boxes where Tyler would never look. As I wrapped each expensive gift in premium paper with coordinating ribbons, another expense I hadn't initially considered, I felt a mix of emotions. There was grim satisfaction in knowing I'd managed to get everything on their lists. There was anxiety about the financial hole I'd dug myself into. But mostly, there was a simmering anger that my sister's family had pushed me to this point. What about Tyler's Christmas? I had exactly $78 left for his gifts. I found a set of art supplies on sale for $30, 2 science books from the bargain bin for $15, and a pen. Not just any pen, but one that had a small built-in telescope at the top and could project constellations when clicked. It cost $25, nearly a third of my remaining budget, but it combined Tyler's love of space and drawing. It wasn't the microscope he'd hoped for, nowhere near what his cousins would receive, but it was something special. While I worked overnight shifts, Mrs. Davidson stayed at our apartment. I'd come home at 7 in the morning exhausted to find Tyler eating the breakfast she'd prepared before school. "You look tired, Dad," he'd say, concern in his young eyes. "I'm fine, buddy," I'd assure him, "just working hard to make Christmas special." If he only knew how special it would be, just not in the way anyone expected. Amanda texted regularly during December, finalizing plans for Christmas Eve dinner at her house, followed by the children opening one gift, each with the remainder to be opened Christmas morning. "The kids are beyond excited," she wrote. "Zoe's been dropping hints about the MacBook for weeks." Another text came a few days before Christmas. "By the way, got Tyler some clothes and a few books. Nothing fancy but practical. Hope that's okay." I stared at my phone incensed. Practical gifts for my son while I'd spent every spare penny on her children's extravagant wishes. But I simply replied, "Sounds great, thanks." The stage was set. The gifts were wrapped and labeled. All that remained was the execution of a plan that would either make me the villain in a family Christmas story or teach my sister the lesson she desperately needed to learn. Christmas Eve arrived with a light dusting of snow that made the city look like a greeting card. Tyler bounded out of bed that morning, his excitement palpable. "Dad, it's Christmas Eve. We're going to Aunt Amanda's tonight." I smiled, hiding the knot in my stomach. That's right, buddy. We need to be there by 4 o'clock. We spent the morning making cookies, simple sugar cookies, cut into stars and trees decorated with green and red sprinkles. Tyler insisted on setting aside the best ones for Santa. Do you think Aunt Amanda's house has a good chimney for Santa? He asked carefully, arranging cookies on a plate. I'm sure it does, I replied, thinking of the 3 massive fireplaces in my sister's home. But Santa finds a way into every home where children are waiting, even apartments without chimneys like ours. Especially those, I assured him. After lunch, we dressed in our Christmas outfits. I wore the only suit I owned, purchased 3 years ago for a cousin's wedding. It hung a bit loose now. Stress and skipped meals had trimmed my frame. Tyler wore khaki pants and a red sweater we'd found on clearance last January, saving it for special occasions. I loaded the mountain of gifts into the back of my aging SUV, arranging them carefully so they wouldn't slide around on the drive. They filled the entire cargo area and part of the back seat. Tyler's eyes widened at the sight. Wow, Dad, that's a lot of presents. Yes, it is, I said, avoiding further explanation. The drive to Amanda's took 30 minutes, my anxiety building with each mile. Was I really going through with this? Was I teaching a valuable lesson or just being petty? The questions churned in my mind, but each time I glanced at Tyler in the rearview mirror, his innocent excitement strengthened my resolve. Amanda's house was a spectacle of holiday excess. Professional lighting outlined the roofline and windows with illuminated reindeer and snowmen positioned across the manicured lawn. A massive wreath hung on the front door, and through the windows, I could see the promised 12-foot tree glittering with hundreds of ornaments. Richard opened the door, cocktail in hand. Willie, Tyler, Merry Christmas. Come in, come in. He wore a festive sweater that probably cost more than all the clothes in my closet combined. I see you've brought quite a haul, he remarked, glancing at my multiple trips to bring in all the gifts. Going a bit overboard, aren't we? There was that condescending tone again, as if I couldn't possibly afford what I was carrying. Just wanted to make the kids happy, I replied neutrally. Amanda appeared in a red designer dress looking like she'd stepped out of a holiday catalog. Willie, you didn't need to bring so many gifts, she exclaimed, eyes widening at the pile I was assembling under her tree. That's far too generous. The dismissive "you shouldn't have" tone made my blood simmer, but I simply smiled. It's Christmas. The kids deserve something special. Amanda's children bounded in, immediately circling the new additions to their already substantial gift mountain. Zoe picked up a package, with her name shaking it slightly. Is this what I think it is? She asked, eyes glinting with materialistic glee. You'll find out tomorrow, I said, with a wink that disguised my inner turmoil. The evening proceeded with an elaborate dinner served on holiday china that Amanda mentioned had been hand-painted in France. The prime rib was perfectly cooked, the sides expertly prepared, and the wine flowed freely for the adults. Throughout the meal, conversation revolved around the children's anticipation of their gifts, Richard's year-end bonus, and Amanda's plans to redecorate the guest wing in the spring. Tyler sat quietly, occasionally catching my eye with a small smile. He was well behaved, as always, thanking Amanda for each course and complimenting the food. His cousins, by contrast, complained about the Brussels sprouts, demanded different drinks than what had been served, and repeatedly asked how much longer until they could open their traditional Christmas Eve gift. After dessert, a bûche de Noël, from an upscale bakery, Amanda announced it was time for each child to open one present. As is tradition, she proclaimed you may each select one gift to open tonight. The rest will wait for Santa's arrival. The children raced to the tree. Zoe and Maxwell immediately grabbed the largest boxes with their names while Emily deliberated between 2 equally huge packages. Tyler stood back uncertain. Go ahead, Tyler, Amanda encouraged. I think the blue package with the silver bow is for you. Tyler retrieved the package, small compared to his cousin's selections, and returned to his seat beside me. We watched as Zoe unwrapped an expensive designer jacket, just what I wanted. Maxwell revealed a limited edition gaming headset, sweet now. I can trash talk in surround sound, and Emily squealed over a child-sized vanity set. With real makeup, I'm going to be so beautiful. Then all eyes turned to Tyler. He carefully untied the silver bow and removed the paper without tearing it, a habit he'd developed knowing we reused wrapping paper from year to year. End of quote. Inside was a sweater in a generic department store box. It's blue, Amanda said unnecessarily. I thought it would bring out your eyes. Thank you, Aunt Amanda, Tyler said politely, holding up the sweater that was at least a size too large. It's very nice. We can exchange it if it doesn't fit, she said, already turning her attention back to her own children and their excited chatter. Later, as we prepared to leave, Amanda reminded us to arrive by 9 the next morning. Santa comes early here, she said with a laugh. The children can never wait past 7 to open gifts, but we'll hold them off until you arrive. The drive home was quiet. Tyler stared out the window at Christmas lights decorating the houses we passed. Dad, he finally asked, why does Aunt Amanda have so many presents under her tree? I gripped the steering wheel tighter. Your aunt and uncle can afford to buy lots of gifts, Tyler. Do they love Zoe and Maxwell and Emily more than you love me? The question hit me like a physical blow. Nobody. Not at all. Love isn't measured by how many presents you get or how much they cost. He nodded, but I could see the uncertainty in his expression, the way his young mind was trying to reconcile the difference between his cousin's Christmas bounty and what he could expect at home. Our own apartment felt especially small and plain after the grandeur of Amanda's house. Our artificial tree barely 5 feet tall, and showing where after years of use stood in the corner with a modest collection of wrapped gifts beneath. I'd tried to make it festive with strings of colored lights and the paper snowflakes we'd cut out together, but the contrast was stark. Time for bed, I said, helping Tyler hang a stocking on the wall near our TV stand. We had no fireplace. Santa needs you to be asleep. After Tyler brushed his teeth and changed into pajamas, I tucked him in and read, "'Twas the night before Christmas," as was our tradition. He fell asleep quickly, emotionally drained from the evening. I set my alarm for 6, wanting to be awake before Tyler to see his reaction to his gifts. Despite everything, I wanted his Christmas morning to be special. The piercing sound of my alarm pulled me from restless sleep. I quickly shut it off and shuffled to the living room to turn on the Christmas tree lights and make coffee. I'd just taken my first sip when I heard Tyler's bedroom door open. "Dad, it's Christmas," he called, running into the living room in his rocket ship pajamas, hair tousled from sleep. "Merry Christmas, buddy," I said, summoning enthusiasm despite the heaviness in my chest. Tyler dropped to his knees beside the tree, surveying the small pile of presents with his name. There were 5. In total, the art supplies, 2 books, the special pen, and a small stocking filled with chocolate coins and a couple of toy cars I'd found at the dollar store. "Can I open them now?" he asked, bouncing on his knees. "Go for it." I encouraged, sitting on the couch with my coffee, trying to ignore the clock ticking toward our 9 o'clock appointment at Amanda's. Tyler opened each gift with deliberate care, genuinely thanking me for every item, regardless of its modest nature. The art supplies elicited a, "Wow, Dad, these colors are amazing." The books prompted excited, flipping through pages and declarations of, "I can't wait to learn about black holes." The dollar store cars were immediately rolled across the plies. Carpet with engine noises. Finally, he reached for the small box containing the pen. He unwrapped it, slowly opened the box, and held up the pen with a questioning look. "It's special," I explained, taking it gently and showing him how to click the top to project star constellations on the wall. "See, now you can have the stars even in your bedroom." His face lit up momentarily as he saw the projection, but then a shadow crossed his features. He clicked it off and sat back on his heels, the pen clutched in his small hand. "Thank you for my presents, Dad," he said quietly. "You're welcome, Tyler. I wish." I trailed off, unsure how to finish that sentence without revealing my financial struggles. He looked up at me with those earnest eyes that could see straight through adult pretenses. "It's okay, Dad. I know budget is tight." Budget is tight. My own words from countless small disappointments throughout the year repeated back to me in my son's voice. 4 words that encompassed so much: the field trips, I couldn't afford the new shoes delayed until the old ones had holes, the birthday parties at friends' houses where his gift was always the least expensive. "Are you disappointed?" I asked, needing to hear the truth. Tyler hesitated, then asked in a whisper that shattered my heart, Was I bad this year, Dad? The question hung in the air between us, devastating in its innocence. This beautiful child, who never complained, who understood budget, is tight, before he understood multiplication, thought his modest Christmas was a reflection of his worth. No, I said firmly, moving to kneel beside him. You are the best kid in the whole world. You're kind and smart and thoughtful. Never ever think you don't deserve wonderful things. He nodded, but I could see the comparison with his cousin's Christmas haul was weighing on him. He was trying so hard to be mature to not make me feel bad, and that made it all worse. In that moment, my decision crystallized. The plan I'd been wavering on solidified into absolute certainty. I checked my watch. 7:15. We had time. Tyler, I said, I need to run an errand before we go to Aunt Amanda's. Get dressed quickly. Okay. He looked confused but nodded. Are we bringing more presents for Zoe and Maxwell and Emily? Something like that, I replied already, pulling on my boots. Something like that. 20 minutes later, we were back in the SUV, driving through empty Christmas morning streets. Tyler sat in the back seat, puzzled, but trusting, as always. Where are we going, Dad? To Aunt Amanda's, I replied, hands tight on the steering wheel. We just need to get there a little earlier than planned. But you said we're not supposed to arrive until 9. It's only 7:45. I know, buddy. There's something I need to do first. We pulled onto Amanda's street, the grand homes, still dark, in the early morning light. Occasional Christmas lights twinkled, but most had been turned off overnight. Her house stood imposing at the end of the cul-de-sac, no signs of activity yet visible through the windows. I parked in the driveway and turned to face Tyler. I need to tell you something important. I began choosing my words carefully. Last night, all those presents I brought to Aunt Amanda's house. They weren't from her and Uncle Richard. They were from me, for your cousins. Tyler's brow furrowed in confusion. You bought Zoe and Maxwell and Emily presents, all those big boxes. Yes, I spent almost all our Christmas money on gifts for them. That's why your Christmas was. I couldn't finish, shame washing over me. But why, Dad? The hurt in his voice was unbearable. I sighed deeply. Because I was angry at Aunt Amanda and Uncle Richard for making you feel less important than your cousins. They have so much, Tyler, and they never think about people who have less. I wanted to teach them a lesson. By buying them lots of presents, he was struggling to understand the adult complexity of my motives. No, buddy. By giving them exactly what they wanted, and then, I took a deep breath. By taking it all away. His eyes widened. We're stealing their presents. Not stealing, I corrected quickly. Taking back what I paid for. I bought those gifts, Tyler. Every single expensive item your cousins asked for. Aunt Amanda and Uncle Richard barely got you a sweater that doesn't even fit. I watched understanding slowly dawn on his face. Is that why you've been working so many nights? For their presents? The question pierced me. Yes, I admitted. And now I realize that was wrong. I should have spent that money on you, on us. So we're going to fix it. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the emergency key Amanda had given me years ago. Wait here. I'll be quick. No, Tyler said, unbuckling his seatbelt. I'm coming with you. We approached the house quietly. I used the key in the side door that led through the mudroom into the kitchen. The house was silent, except for the hum of the refrigerator and the ticking of an antique grandfather clock in the hallway. Follow me, I whispered, leading Tyler to the great room where the massive Christmas tree stood surrounded by presents. Many had From Santa tags, but I easily identified the ones I'd brought. My wrapping paper and handwriting stood out among the professionally wrapped packages. Help me gather all the gifts with my handwriting, I instructed Tyler, who hesitated only briefly before joining me. We worked silently and efficiently. The MacBook Air for Zoe, the PlayStation 5 and VR headset for Maxwell, the American Girl collection for Emily, plus all the smaller supplementary gifts I'd purchased to round out their hauls. One by one, we carried them out to the SUV, filling the back just as it had been the day before. As we loaded the last package, Tyler looked up at me. What about the sweater Aunt Amanda gave me? I paused, then nodded. Go get it if you want. It's your choice. He disappeared back into the house and returned moments later with the department store box. It's not the sweater's fault, he said simply. When we'd retrieved everything, I took one last walk through the great room. The tree still had plenty of gifts beneath it. Amanda and Richard had purchased numerous presents for their children, of course. But there were now conspicuous empty spaces where my contributions had been. On impulse, I took out my phone and snapped a photo of the tree with its depleted bounty. Then I led Tyler back to the car, locked the house, and drove away just as lights began turning on in neighboring homes. "What happens now, Dad?" Tyler asked as we pulled onto the main road. "Now we go home and decide what to do with all these gifts," I replied. "They're ours to do with, as we choose." Back at our apartment, we unloaded the SUV, bringing in box after box until our small living room was crowded with expensive presents. Tyler sat on the couch, looking at the pile thoughtfully. "Can we keep them?" he asked. I shook my head. "Most of them aren't right for us, buddy. The MacBook is too expensive for us to maintain. The PlayStation games would cost a fortune, and you're a bit old for American Girl dolls." He giggled at that last part, which lightened the mood momentarily. "What will we do with them then?" "I have some ideas," I said. "But first I need to send a message to Aunt Amanda." I pulled out my phone and opened the photo I'd taken of their tree with the empty spaces. I attached it to a text message to my sister and typed 2 simple words, "Gifts retrieved." I hit send, then immediately turned off my phone. "Let's have some breakfast," I suggested to Tyler. "Then we can talk about what happens next." Over pancakes, our Christmas tradition, I explained my plan to Tyler. "I think we should donate most of these gifts to the children's hospital. What do you think?" He nodded slowly, processing the idea. The kids there would be really happy to get them, especially on Christmas. "Exactly. But I added, I think it would be fair if you chose 1 or 2 special things to keep. You deserve something nice too." Tyler's face lit up. "Really anything?" "Within reason," I clarified. "Something that would actually be useful for you." He surveyed the pile of gifts thoughtfully, then pointed to a large flat package. "Can I see what's in that one?" I brought it over and helped him unwrap it, the professional drawing tablets I'd purchased for Zoe. Tyler's eyes widened at the sight. "This would be perfect for my space drawings," he breathed. "And I could learn digital art like they teach at school." "Then it's yours," I said, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. "Choose one more thing if you'd like." After much deliberation, he selected a science kit designed for building simple machines, originally a supplementary gift for Maxwell. "This looks really cool, Dad. We could build stuff together." The rest of the gifts we repacked carefully to donate. I found empty boxes in our recycling room and redistributed some items to make more balanced gifts for unknown recipients. As we worked, Tyler asked questions about my plan, about why people give gifts, about what makes Christmas special. I did my best to answer honestly to help him understand the complicated emotions and dynamics at play. By the time we finished, it was nearly 8:30. "Aunt Amanda will be waking up soon," I said, "and finding her children's big gifts missing." Tyler looked worried. "Will she be mad?" "Very mad," I admitted. "But sometimes people need to feel strong emotions to learn important lessons." I turned my phone back on, and immediately it began buzzing with notifications. 12 missed calls from Amanda. 23 text messages escalating from confusion to panic to rage. The latest sent just minutes ago. "We know it was you. How could you ruin Christmas? The kids are devastated. Richard is calling the police if you don't bring everything back right now." I showed the message to Tyler, whose eyes widened. "Are we in trouble, Dad?" "No, buddy. I paid for those gifts. They were mine to take back." I hoped I sounded more confident than I felt, but I think we should prepare for a visit from your aunt very soon. Sure enough, at precisely 6 o'clock, an angry pounding began on our apartment door. The pounding on our door was so forceful that pictures rattled on the walls. Tyler jumped, startled by the sudden noise, and moved closer to me on the couch where we'd been reading one of his new science books. "Willie, open this door right now." Amanda's voice carried clearly through the door, high-pitched with fury. "I know you're in there." I put my arm around Tyler's shoulders. "It's going to be okay," I assured him, though my racing heart suggested otherwise. "Stay here while I talk to Aunt Amanda." The pounding continued, unabated. "Willie, you can't do this. It's Christmas morning. The children are waiting. I approached the door, but didn't open it. Amanda, you need to calm down. You're disturbing the entire building. Calm down, calm down. You broke into my house and stole my children's Christmas presents. Richard is calling the police right now. Through the peephole, I could see her red face contorted with rage. Richard standing behind her with his phone to his ear, looking equally furious. I also noticed several of my neighbors peering cautiously from their doorways at the commotion. I didn't steal anything, Amanda. I took back gifts that I purchased with my own money. I kept my voice level, determined not to match her emotional pitch. You ruined Christmas, she screamed, pounding again. Zoe is sobbing. Maxwell locked himself in his room. Emily doesn't understand why Santa took back her presents. A twinge of guilt hit me at the thought of my nieces and nephews upset on Christmas morning, but I pushed it aside. Where are your children now? At home with the nanny. We've been out here for 40 minutes. Open the door so we can talk about this like adults. 40 minutes. They'd left their children alone on Christmas morning to come scream at my door for 40 minutes. The irony wasn't lost on me. I turned to see Tyler standing in the hallway, anxiety written across his face. It's okay, buddy, I said softly. Why don't you go to your room for a few minutes while I talk to Aunt Amanda and Uncle Richard? He nodded and retreated, closing his bedroom door behind him. I took a deep breath and opened the door, standing firmly in the doorway to block entry. Lower your voice, Amanda. This is a residential building with families celebrating Christmas. She tried to push past me into the apartment, but I held my ground. Where are they? She demanded. Where are the presents? Some are being donated to the children's hospital today. Some Tyler chose to keep since he received so little from you and Richard. Amanda's face flushed deeper. You had no right. Those were gifts. Gifts that I purchased, I reminded her. Every single item on your children's lists. The MacBook, the PlayStation, the VR headset, the American Girl collection. I bought all of it. $1,900 worth of presents for your children, while mine received a pen for Christmas. Richard stepped forward, his expression darkening. Are you insane? Breaking into our house? Taking gifts meant for children? We've already filed a police report. Go ahead, I replied calmly. Explain to the officers how your brother-in-law took back the gifts he purchased because you gave his son a pen and an ill-fitting sweater for Christmas. See how that plays in family court? Amanda's anger momentarily gave way to confusion. What are you talking about? We got Tyler several gifts. A sweater that doesn't fit and some books he already owns. Meanwhile, I spent $1,900 money I didn't have buying your children everything on their extravagant wish lists. But why would you do that? Amanda seemed genuinely perplexed. Because at Thanksgiving, your husband suggested Santa visits nicer neighborhoods more often. Because you've spent years making Tyler feel less than around your children. Because when he opened his modest gifts this morning, do you know what he asked me? My voice cracked slightly. He asked if he was bad this year. My 8-year-old son thought he received less because he wasn't good enough. Amanda's expression shifted, the rage giving way to something more complicated. Richard looked uncomfortable for the first time. We never meant to. Amanda began. You never meant to what? Make him feel worthless. Compare our lives to yours at every opportunity. Dismiss his accomplishments while celebrating your children's every minor achievement. The words poured out years of frustration, finding the bottling. Release. You live in a 6,000 square foot house, drive luxury cars, and take exotic vacations. Yet you couldn't be bothered to find out what my son actually wanted for Christmas, or make sure the sweater you got him even fit. Mrs. Petrovich from across the hall stepped into the hallway, concern on her wrinkled face. Everything okay out here? Should I call security? Everything's fine, Mrs. Petrovich, I assured her. My sister and her husband were just leaving. We're not going anywhere without those presents, Richard insisted. Our children are waiting. Your children have more than enough without my contributions, I said firmly. Go home to them. Be present with them on Christmas morning instead of standing in my hallway threatening me. You don't understand, Amanda said, her voice lower now but still tense. We promised them these specific things. Zoe has been talking about that MacBook for months. Maxwell told all his friends about the PlayStation. And whose fault is that? You promised them expensive gifts before making sure they were secured. You taught them to expect everything they want without understanding its value. The tension hung heavy in the air. Richard looked at his watch impatiently. This is ridiculous. We're wasting Christmas morning out here. Just then, Tyler's bedroom door opened. He stepped into the hallway, clutching the constellation pen I'd given him. All eyes turned to him. "Hi, Aunt Amanda." "Hi, Uncle Richard," he said quietly. "Merry Christmas." Amanda's expression softened at the sight of her nephew. "Merry Christmas, Tyler," she replied automatically. Tyler walked closer, stopping beside me. "Dad told me he bought all those presents for Zoe and Maxwell and Emily because he was mad at you." His directness, as always, cut through the adult complexities. I think that wasn't very nice of him. I looked down at my son, surprised. But he continued it. "Also wasn't very nice that you and Uncle Richard make Dad feel bad about our apartment and his job. And it wasn't nice when Uncle Richard said, 'Santa visits nicer neighborhoods more.'" Amanda's eyes widened at hearing her son's comment repeated back by her nephew. Richard had the grace to look embarrassed. "I don't need a MacBook or a PlayStation," Tyler went on. "But it made me sad when I thought Santa brought my cousins so much and me so little. It made me think I wasn't good enough." His simple honesty landed like a physical blow. Amanda's eyes filled with tears, and even Richard's stern expression cracked. "You are good enough," Tyler, Amanda said softly. "More than good enough. I'm sorry if we ever made you feel otherwise." An uncomfortable silence followed, broken only when Mrs. Petrovich quietly retreated back into her apartment, sensing the tension had diminished. I placed my hand on Tyler's shoulder. "Thank you for being honest, buddy. Why don't you go back to your room while I finish talking with Aunt Amanda and Uncle Richard?" He nodded and turned to go, then paused and held out the constellation pen to Amanda. "Look what Dad got me. It shows stars on the ceiling. Isn't it cool?" Amanda took the pen, carefully examining it. "It's very cool, Tyler. Very special." She handed it back with a forced smile. After Tyler had returned to his room, I turned back to my sister and brother-in-law. "Go home to your children," I said quietly. "Explain to them that Christmas isn't about getting everything on their lists. Tell them about children who have so much less. Make this a teaching moment." "And the gifts?" Richard asked, his tone less demanding now. As I said, some are being donated. Some Tyler chose to keep as his Christmas presents. The rest. I hesitated. "I'll bring some of them by later today. Not all, but enough that your children won't feel punished for adults' mistakes." Amanda nodded slowly. "Willie, I never realized. I never thought about how our lifestyle affects you and Tyler." "That's the problem, Amanda. You never thought." She flinched at my words, but didn't argue. "We should get back," Richard said to Amanda, placing his hand on her arm. "The children will be wondering where we are." Amanda nodded, then looked at me again. "This conversation isn't over. But you're right that we should be with our kids right now." "Merry Christmas," I said, not without irony. "Merry Christmas," she echoed mechanically, before turning to leave Richard following close behind. I closed the door and leaned against it, emotionally drained, but somehow lighter. The confrontation I'd been dreading was over, and while nothing was truly resolved, something had shifted. For the first time in years, Amanda had actually heard me. More importantly, she'd heard Tyler. I went to his room and found him sitting on his bed, looking through one of his new science books. "How did it go?" he asked, looking up anxiously. "It went okay," I assured him. "Better than I expected, actually. And that was largely thanks to you, buddy. I didn't want them to be mad at you." "I know. You were very brave to speak up." I sat beside him on the bed. "I owe you an apology, Tyler. I let my anger at Aunt Amanda and Uncle Richard affect your Christmas. That wasn't fair to you." He considered this, then asked, "Are we still going to donate the presents to the hospital?" "Some of them. I told Aunt Amanda I'd bring some back for your cousins too. They're just kids after all. They didn't create this situation." Tyler nodded thoughtfully. "That seems fair." Then he smiled. "Can we still keep the drawing tablets and science kit?" I laughed, feeling the tension of the morning finally breaking. "Absolutely. Those are yours, fair and square." "This is a weird Christmas, Dad." "It certainly is, buddy. But maybe an important one." As we sat together on his bed, I realized that despite the drama and confrontation, I felt more at peace than I had in months. Something long festering had finally been lanced, and though the healing would take time, it had begun. The week after Christmas passed in a blur of unexpected conversations and realizations. I'd returned some of the gifts to Amanda's house later on Christmas Day, the PlayStation for Maxwell, a few American Girl accessories for Emily, and a nice but less expensive drawing tablet for Zoe, rather than the professional one Tyler had chosen to keep. I'd left them on the porch with a note. For the kids. We should talk after the holidays. Tyler and I spent the rest of Christmas Day in peaceful simplicity. We played with his new science kit building, a small working catapult that launched marshmallows across the living room. We experimented with his digital drawing tablet, laughing at our clumsy first attempts at digital art. In the evening, we dropped off the remaining gifts at the children's hospital, where a tearful nurse thanked us for bringing unexpected joy to kids spending their holidays in medical care. How does it feel to give those presents away? I asked Tyler as we drove home. He thought for a moment. Good. Like we're helping make other kids' Christmas better. That's exactly right, buddy. 3 days after Christmas, Amanda called. The conversation was awkward at first, but gradually evolved into the most honest exchange we'd had in years. I've been thinking about what happened, she said. About what Tyler said. He has a way of cutting through the nonsense, I replied. Yes, he does. She paused. Willie, I never realized how our lifestyle was affecting you and Tyler. I never intended to make either of you feel less than. Intentions and impact are different things, Amanda. I know that now. Another pause. The kids were upset at first, but Richard and I had a long talk with them about gratitude and perspective. We took them to volunteer at a homeless shelter yesterday. It was eye-opening for all of us. I was genuinely surprised. That's a good start. Zoe asked why we have so much when others have so little. I didn't have a good answer for her. It's a complicated question. Yes, but one worth asking. Her voice softened. I'm sorry, Willie. For everything. For making Tyler feel he wasn't good enough. For taking you for granted. For not seeing how hard you work to give Tyler a good life. The apology, unexpected and seemingly sincere, momentarily left me speechless. Thank you for saying that I finally managed. Richard and I would like to have you and Tyler over for dinner next week. Just family, no pressure. A do-over of sorts. I hesitated, weighing the olive branch being extended. Let me talk to Tyler about it. Of course. And Willie. The gifts you returned were more than generous. The kids love them. After hanging up, I sat at the kitchen table processing the conversation. Part of me remained skeptical of Amanda's apparent epiphany, wondering if it would last beyond the holiday season. Another part recognized the genuine remorse in her voice, and wanted to believe change was possible. The following week, a package arrived at our door. Inside was a gift card for a significant amount to a major department store and a note from Richard for Tyler's wardrobe. No strings attached. We should have done better. I showed it to Tyler, explaining that we could use it to get him new clothes for school. His response surprised me. Can we use some of it to get coats for kids who don't have them? Like at my school. Pride swelled in my chest. Absolutely we can, buddy. That's a wonderful idea. January brought a dinner at Amanda and Richard's house that was notably different from previous gatherings. The ostentatious display was toned down the conversation, less focused on possessions and status. The children actually played together with Tyler, showing his cousins how his constellation pen worked, while Zoe demonstrated features of her drawing tablet. Amanda pulled me aside during dessert. I've been seeing a therapist, she confided. I realized after Christmas that my obsession with appearances and possessions was affecting my children in unhealthy ways. And my relationship with you. I'm glad, Amanda. Our parents would be so disappointed in how I've treated you, she continued, tears forming in her eyes. After they died, I think I channeled my grief into building this perfect-looking life, but it was all surface. I forgot what they actually valued: family, kindness, integrity. It was the most vulnerable I'd seen my sister in years. Perhaps ever. They'd be proud of you for recognizing that, I said, surprising myself with the sincere response. My own healing journey took different forms. A close friend, Marcus, listened without judgment when I finally shared the full Christmas story. "You know what's wild?" he said after I finished. "You were both right and wrong at the same time." "How so?" Taking back the gifts was justifiable, but maybe not the most mature response. But it forced a confrontation that was clearly long overdue. His assessment was fair. I still feel guilty about it sometimes. Of course you do. You're a good person who did something questionable for understandable reasons. But look at the outcome. Your sister is in therapy, your relationship is improving, and Tyler got to see his dad stand up for what's right, even if the method was imperfect. His perspective helped me forgive myself for the dramatic Christmas morning retrieval, while still acknowledging that I could have handled things differently. I also started attending a support group for single parents, finding community with others who understood the unique challenges of raising children alone. The validation and practical advice helped ease my constant worry about providing enough for Tyler. By the following December, our family dynamic had transformed remarkably. Amanda suggested a completely different approach to Christmas. Each child would receive 3 gifts: something they want, something they need, and something to expand their mind. Additionally, each family member would select a charity to support together. Tyler chose an organization that provides science equipment to underfunded schools, because everyone should get to do cool experiments, he explained. Christmas morning at Amanda's house, where we'd been invited to stay overnight, was noticeably calmer than the previous year. The children opened their thoughtfully selected gifts with appreciation rather than the frenzied unwrapping of past holidays. Afterward, we all volunteered at a community dinner for isolated seniors. As I watched Tyler helping an elderly woman fill her plate, chatting animatedly about his new telescope, his want gift, I reflected on how much had changed in a year. The painful Christmas confrontation had ultimately led to something valuable: a family reconnecting with what truly matters. That evening, after Tyler had gone to bed, Amanda, Richard, and I sat in their living room with glasses of wine. "I was thinking about last Christmas," Amanda said quietly. "About how close we came to permanently damaging our family." Richard nodded. "I still cringe remembering that Santa visits nicer neighborhoods comment. What a terrible thing to say." "We've all made mistakes," I acknowledged. "What matters is that we learned from them." "The kids have changed too," Amanda noted. "Zoe asked for donations to an animal shelter instead of gifts for her birthday last month. Can you imagine that happening before?" We shared a knowing smile, recognizing the ripple effects of our family's transformation. As I drove Tyler home the next day, he asked Dad, "Do you think next Christmas will be as good as this one?" "I hope so, buddy. But you know what? Christmas isn't really about one day. It's about how we treat each other all year long." He nodded thoughtfully, like how Aunt Amanda calls just to talk now, not to brag about stuff. Exactly like that. The experience taught me profound lessons about family materialism and courage. I learned that sometimes standing up for what's right requires difficult confrontations. I learned that people, even those who seem unchangeable, can grow when faced with honest reflection. Most importantly, I learned that the greatest gift we can give our children isn't found in any store, but in modeling integrity and compassion. Tyler learned valuable lessons too. He saw firsthand that material possessions don't define a person's worth. He experienced the joy of giving to those less fortunate. And perhaps most importantly, he witnessed adults acknowledging mistakes and working to repair relationships, a lesson in humility and growth that no wrapped present could provide. As we navigate family gatherings now, there's a newfound authenticity in our interactions. We're not perfect. Old habits occasionally resurface, and tensions sometimes flare. But underneath it all is a shared commitment to something deeper than appearances or possessions: genuine connection and mutual respect. I often think about that constellation pen, how something so small contained the universe within it. In many ways, it symbolizes what I hope Tyler carries forward from this experience: the understanding that true value isn't measured in dollars, but in meaning that light can be found even in darkness, and that sometimes the most precious gifts are the lessons we learn through challenge. What about you? Have you ever had to take a difficult stand with family that ultimately led to healing, or experienced a holiday that changed your perspective? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, please hit that like button, Subscribe to hear more of my experiences and share this with someone who might need to know they're not alone in navigating complicated family dynamics. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes the hardest conversations lead to the most beautiful beginnings. Wishing you holidays filled with authentic connection and genuine joy.